So I'm talking with a friend the other day, and bless her heart, she's trying to understand what I do for a living, or more particularly, why I do it. Right? She's a Christian, a Catholic to be exact, and we're really good friends. I've been friends with her as long as I've known Lucinda, and Lucinda was friends with her before that. And she's happy for us that we have jobs that we love and that allow us to travel and to live where we want, or at least where we choose, but she just doesn't get the why part of it. Now, we hang out pretty regularly, and most of the time we manage to avoid the topic of religion altogether. She's really one of those, church on Easter and Christmas, and when I'm trying to prove a point to my atheist friends that I do too go to church more often than just Easter and Christmas kind of Christians. It's not a huge part of her life. It's just the immortality stopgap in the back pocket that religion is for most religious Americans. But once in a while, the topic will rear its ugly head and intrude on our otherwise peaceful game of Azul. And just such an instance occurred a couple of weeks ago. I've been wanting to do a diatribe about it ever since. So her question is basically always the same when she asks about my job. She usually finds a new way of phrasing it, but it almost always boils down to, so what's your problem with religion anyway? Right? She'll give me some variation of that. So naturally, I'll just start listing evil shit the church does. And as easy as that normally is, it's extra easy when you're talking to a person that tithes to the Vatican. But invariably, we fall into this same rut. And it's probably a rut that you're as familiar with as I am. But that's because they're doing it wrong bullshit when your interlocutor patiently explains to you that those evil kid rapey, mass shooty, church bomby, gay hatey types aren't actually religious. They're just kid raping, mass shooting, homophobic terrorists that sign God's name to their homework. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole diatribe debunking the no true Scotsman fallacy. It's too dumb to fill up the segment. God can't speak for himself, or if you're trying to be overly kind, he just refuses to for some reason. So every individual believer is left to fill in the blanks with whatever words they want, and whoever uses different words must be getting the words wrong. See, when my friend was invoking the trueness of her Scotsman, she kept saying shit like, but that's not what God wants, and that's not what God thinks, and that's not what God demands. And I kept trying to correct her by adding the possessive in there. Right? That's not what my God wants. That's not what my God thinks. That's not what my God demands. But of course, she's theologically obligated not to admit that the possessive can even exist there. Sure, you'd be hard-pressed to find two Christians who define God the same way, or would even give consistent answers about him on a what Game of Thrones character are you quiz, but their whole concept of God insists that they at least pretend they're all talking about the same guy. I mean, look, this is part of the reason I'm so insistent on not capitalizing the G in God. Yes, part of it is that lowercase is just grammatically correct there. And if you want to hear more about that argument, I recommend the diatribe from episode 132. But I'd be willing to make a grammatically incorrect concession to tradition for the sake of communication if it didn't also promote bad ideas. See, when it comes to God's personhood, religious debaters want to have it both ways. They want to laugh off our simplistic notions of God as some guy out there somewhere when it suits them, but then ascribe the characteristics of an individual to him the rest of the time. I mean, if you look at the attributes of God that pretty much every Christian can agree on, none of them are human attributes or even individual attributes. They're the attributes of a concept, and concepts don't get capitalized. See, to even refer to God as though you're talking about a being, even a fictional one, is already given ground to their argument. God is undefined in virtually every religious debate you'll ever have, and to the extent he is defined, it's usually with absolute qualities like being all-knowing, omnipresent, outside of time. Now, we obviously all agree that a person who is all-knowing, omnipresent, and outside of time isn't a real thing that exists. We have to agree with that or they'll take away our atheist cards. But I'd argue that it isn't even a concept that can exist. Right? When you move that far from human in your construction of a being, you can't then tag in human attributes when they please you. God, as defined for purposes of debate by the people on his side, is more akin to a concept like infinite parallel lines or gross national product than he is to people or even to previous gods. Right? Like Zeus was a dude. He was a fictional dude, but he was a dude with dude properties plus magic powers. And Christians have one of those gods too. His name is Yahweh or Jehovah or something, but it's not God. And this matters. See, Christians have this habit in conversation of moving seamlessly between Jehovah the dude and God the concept, and capitalizing the G reinforces an acceptance of that rhetorical bait and switch. They'll try to justify the existence of God by giving him this flighty conceptual definition, but then they'll shift right into saying, and he said X, as though the flimsy philosophical construct they built around all-knowingness and omnipresence is just a no-brainer synonym for the God of the Bible. Either God is Jehovah or God is this concept. And if they want God to be Jehovah, they're stuck with what's in the fucking book. Anything they add to that requires, at the very least, a possessive. Right? At best, they're speaking for their God at that point, and everybody else's interpretation, regardless of whether they're religious, is equally valid. At its worst, that's a call to immoral action. At its best, it's an excuse to ignore it.